movies, 10 unique shots, and I'm gonna recreate them all. I set out to recreate one shot from every Oscar-nominated Best Picture of this year. I recognize I'm a little late to the Oscar hype, but I started this video all the way back in March, and I had no clue what I was in for. We have to build this whole Barbie set in 2 days.
We are running out of light.
The light is reflecting in every take.
And in 3, 2, 1, action.
This video is sponsored by Artlist, more on that later. I live in Michigan, which has lots of snow. Often, it will snow well into March, which is generally inconvenient. But for recreating a shot from Anatomy of a Fall, it's very helpful because the movie takes place in the French Alps. So there's a lot of shots with a lot of snow, including this one. This was the shot used as the movie poster, so it makes sense as the shot we do. However, this year, we barely got snow in Michigan, and seeing as we're almost in April, it's not looking good. So I'm stuck waiting, hoping for snow. In the meantime though, we should figure out where we're shooting. Fortunately, I have an idea.
We can shoot right here in my condo through this second-story window. We just have to open the window.
We gotta remove this screen. I can't get it out. I almost have it. Yes! That took entirely too long. And then stick a camera through it and point it down at the ground. It may not be as high as the original, but it should work. The ground is soaking wet and muddy, so I'm not going to lay down in it. Once we have some snow, this will totally work. So where are we on the snow front? Looking at the weather app for this weekend, it looks pretty definitively snowless. So on to Plan B. What is Plan B? Sodium polyacrylate. I learned about this from Scott Reeder. He's that prop guy on TikTok, and apparently, this is how you make ground snow. So you just take like a scoop of this, you add some water, it's super absorbent. Oh, that was maybe too much. Whoa, wow. That is very snow-like. Let's just keep adding water, I guess. Although this expanded a lot, I'd need a ton of this in order to cover the ground, more than I think I can afford. However, I have another plan. To match the lighting of the original, we need to shoot during blue hour. It's that small window of time when the sky is blue in the evening. That means we need to be setting up in the afternoon and be ready to shoot immediately when blue hour begins, around 8 o'clock. We'll probably only have 30 to 45 minutes to get the shot, and if we miss that window, we'll have to take everything down and come back a different day. To address the snow cost issue, we can cover the ground in white fabric first, then put our fake snow on top to get a snowy texture, saving a lot of time and money not needing to buy so much fake snow. From high up, this should look super convincing. And when I say cover the ground in fabric, I only mean the spots where people are. The rest can just stay as grass since we don't need the whole ground covered in snow. That may sound incorrect, but there's just something we can't get around. It's a wide shot of snow-covered ground. It would take a lot of time and money to cover the whole ground, which is why we're gonna film it in parts. In fact, 2 separate shots that we'll stitch together in post, replacing the ground with snow using generative fill to make them into one cohesive shot. This is all theoretical, but I think it will work. The trickiest part though is that slim window of time for lighting, so we have to start by 4 o'clock. We only had an hour and a half, and we needed much more fake snow than we thought.
It's 7:30 right now, so we have 30 minutes to put all of this together.
We had to scale up our snow production.
It's 8 o'clock, we've gotta move.
The sun was gone, and we had to shoot.
We are running out of light.
On to shot 2.
We got this fake blood, I don't know how it works.
And just in time.
I think I can safely say that's a wrap.
Now we just hope my theory is correct. I'm starting by taking a still from each shot into Photoshop and then matching the placement to the original. Mask around the people,
invert the mask, and type in my prompt to generative fill. If all goes well, it should look pretty convincing. This was not a promising start. I refined the prompt and tried again, and again, and again. And after nearly an hour, I had my first break.
Ooh.
It wouldn't work like this, obviously, but it was a good start. I made new masks and generated from there. New mask, generate, new mask, generate, until I finally had the image I wanted. After adding a small shed, I exported the image as a PNG. In DaVinci, I lined up the footage to the empty spots I created, and after some adjustments to match the color grade, we have this shot. Let's just hope the other shots aren't so challenging. I'm the kind of person that points out stuff in the middle of movies, so when I watched this film with my fiancé, I couldn't help but point out the lighting of this shot. I don't know why, it just looked cool, so let's recreate it. Before we get into the lighting though, we need to create this set, which should be pretty simple. Not like Barbie's set, which is going to take some time. Although we can't replicate it exactly, we can at least clear some space in my room, make a fake L-shaped desk, add a lamp, books, notebooks, and other things to make this place look like a student's living space. I didn't have time to print off papers that looked similar to the ones in the shot, so we're using blank paper, and then I'm going to digitally add a bunch of text and stuff to them in post. That's the easy stuff. The tricky part is the camera. Past Lives was shot on 35mm film. I don't have a film camera, but there's a lot that we can do to match it with a digital camera as long as we understand what makes 35mm film. Film stocks are different sizes, with 35mm film being, well, 35mm across. However, these parts of the film stock are for the mechanics of the camera, meaning the area that gets exposed is a little under 25mm across. This is where the image is, and this is called a Super 35 format. I'm using the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K, which is a digital camera. Its sensor is 36mm by 24mm, which is considered full frame. The size of a digital sensor and a film stock directly correlate. But with a digital sensor, the entire sensor captures an image, making our full frame sensor too big. But what's the difference between sensor sizes? Think of sensors or film stocks as windows. The lens sees a large circular area like this. The sensor sees a portion of that circle, with larger sensors seeing more of it. Same lens on both, but the larger sensor is a wider shot. So to solve it, you could move the camera closer, which won't look the same, swap to a different lens which will mostly look the same but you'll have more background blur, or just crop in on a Super 35 portion of the sensor. On a 6K camera, option 3 is the easiest. Of course, there are other things that make film look the way it does, but we'll get to that later. So now, finally, on to lighting. We know this takes place around dawn from later in the scene, which also shows that there's light coming from a window over here. I have a window here as well, but it's midday, which looks nothing like dawn. We'll need to close it and use an Amaran P60C, bounced off a wall to soften it and warmed up to appear more like dawn. Back here looks to be an interior light, which we got by just sticking the Amaran 60X off to the side and setting it to a warmer color. Finally is this light on her face from the screen. I thought we may need to hide a light somewhere, but just pulling up a white image on the computer worked really well. To make our final image look like film, we'll just use Film Convert to emulate Kodak film, giving us a starting place for color, grain, and halation. Then we'll just overlay our fake papers, do a screen replacement, and we have our shot. Nice and simple. Most of the shots in this movie aren't very interesting. The movie tells a lot of its story through the soundscape. Nothing illustrates this more than the 3-minute opening of the title, followed by just a black screen. Yeah. But there was one part of the movie that stood out from the rest. This sequence, all shot in thermal. Shot with really high-end thermal too. I was struggling with how I was gonna do this on a budget until I found these thermal camera phone attachments. I bought one and waited for it to arrive. I have no idea how to use this thing, so it's time to test. Besides being really cool, thermal would be really hard to fake. You'd have to simply assign a color to the brightness of certain regions, which isn't accurate to thermal at all. The downside, though, is that being a cheaper end thermal camera, there's a lot of noise, which we'll have to deal with later. Shooting in thermal also means thinking of things completely differently. It doesn't matter what the lighting looks like, it's all based off heat, so we should just be able to go outside and easily shoot. Well, in Michigan, maybe not so easily.
We're gonna need an umbrella. Our camera's all wet.
With the thermal camera in hand, the real challenge is making it look a lot better than it actually is. There are three main issues. Issue 1 is with detail. Right now our actress is just a white and gray blob. The thermal camera is actually two cameras, obviously one for thermal and the other for detail. That detail then gets overlaid onto the thermal image. Without any light, there's no detail, so we need light after all, which I'm getting by holding an aperture MC while also trying to keep the wind from blowing the phone away. We may have picked the actual worst day to film. The second issue is the lagginess of the camera. It's so choppy. This camera must only be capturing something like 10 frames per second, which is too low to be smooth. But I have an idea. If we have our actress blink slower, basically having her move in slow-mo, we can speed up the footage in post to have more frames in each second. That looks much smoother. The last issue is the noisiness of the image, like I said earlier. There's a lot we can do in DaVinci Resolve though, which has some of the best noise reduction out there. Some other minor adjustments, and now we have our shot. It's not a perfect recreation, but it's pretty good for a $200 thermal camera. There are a few ways to do driving scenes like this. The professional way is to hook a car up to a trailer called a process trailer. It means actors don't have to focus on driving and rigging gear becomes easier. However, it requires permits and a trailer, so we can't do this one. Alternatively, we could actually be driving. In this case, the actors are in the back of a taxi, so they wouldn't even need to drive. Seems like the best option until you consider camera placement. The camera is outside the car while the car is moving. So we'd need to go through setting up a whole camera rig in order to do this method. The final way is called poor man's process. Essentially, you just keep the car parked and you make it look like it's driving, often by using a projector on a background. It was a very common technique in older movies, but some very good examples exist today too. And as the name suggests, it's more cost effective, so this is what we'll do. It's also dark enough in the shot that I think we can skip the projector, so that just leaves the moving streetlight. In the past, I've created this driving car effect by spinning a light on a C-stand. However,
the issue with spinning a light is that it's not very accurate. A car passes by a streetlight, so by keeping a light in one spot and spinning it, it's a lot more like turning a light on and off, just with a little bit of movement. So the idea instead is to set up a sort of zip line between two C-stands. The light would then be on that line and move past a car. Ideally, this would look a lot more like a passing streetlight. Unfortunately, I don't know if this bungee cable is long enough. Yeah, that's not long enough.
At the very least, I was still able to confirm that my idea could work, and after finding my rope, it was time to give this a shot.
Turns out we got no audio of the entire shoot, and I didn't realize until just now, which was going to be an accurate indicator of how the rest of the shoot went. We set up the BMCC 6K on Super 35 mode again to emulate a film made in the 70s, and paired it with a DZOFilm 40mm lens, which is a pretty popular combination, so it makes it likely we're matching the focal length. We waited for it to get darker before moving on, adding a black backdrop behind the car to keep us from seeing any non-moving background. We started by lighting the scene before the passing streetlight. There looks to be a light in front here, a light on the other side of the car back here, and a light coming from the front of the car. Now this is where things get exciting. With our streetlight picked out, we created our zip line between two C-stands, which was so heavy we needed people to hold on to the C-stands at all times to keep them from falling over. We got the glass covered in raindrops, had someone shake the car, and go. Take after take. It was working. I couldn't wait to see the results.
I had to help with holding the zipline together. I wasn't even looking at the shot on set, and I didn't know the light was reflecting in every take. This is very frustrating. We have to do it again. Okay, so how do we do this right? My first thought would be to just change the height of the light. Higher or lower and there's no reflection. But pay attention to the shadows. Higher and we have way more, lower and we have none. Neither of which match the original. I thought maybe we can move the camera. Within reason, since we're trying to match the original, but once the light is moving, it will always cross the window's reflection. So again, how do we do this right? Knowing it was a long shot, I kept watching the original, looking for any clue as to how they did it. And I actually found one. Now look closely at the water droplets. There's a reflection of the light source, and it's a long skinny reflection. An LED tube, which we had, but watch as the street light passes. Pause, look at the reflection again. That LED tube is now a warmer color, which means the LED tube is both the ambient blue light and the street light. And fortunately, I have experience with this. They're using a pixel tube. An LED tube, but each individual LED in the tube can be controlled separately, so you can get this moving light effect. I've actually done this before to get a passing street light, but this time is a bit more complicated, so we need to use DMX. I don't know how to use DMX, but I know the Amran PT4C can. So it's time to do some research. DMX is basically a way to have more control of light by connecting it to a computer. All I had to do was buy this NTech adapter thing and download QLC+, which is a free software. The part that took some time was figuring out how to set it up with the light. I have been at this for hours, and I think I finally did it. Wasn't that pretty frickin' cool? Finally. We're ready for our second shoot. That looks like rain. Our lighting setup is basically going to be the same as last time, just without the zipline. However, I did notice something we missed last time. Both sides of the car have a passing streetlight. Fortunately, DMX makes this super easy. We'll just chain the two lights together, set them to the same channel, and then whatever we do on one light, the same will happen on the other. But now begins the lengthy process of setting up this passing streetlight. I have each one of these pixels set up on each one of these tracks, and I have to set them up one by one. And with a thunderstorm rapidly approaching.
Heavy rain coming in at 140.
The program crashed, and all of what I did is not saved.
Now it's saying 12 a.m.
No, that's a problem.
And guess what time it is? It's 11:35.
All the music you've heard so far in this video is not from the soundtracks of these movies, but from Artlist, which is the sponsor of this video. I've absolutely relied on their vast library of music, sound effects, and stock footage to make this video so far, and I'll need their help to edit the next recreation, Barbie. Cause when setting out to make this video, I knew I wanted the music with each recreation to kinda sound like it's from the soundtrack of that movie. Of course, you can't really use the actual music from the soundtrack because it's copyrighted. This is where Artlist comes in. Artlist has a huge selection of music, all covered under a license to use for your videos or commercial work. Let's use Anatomy of a Fall, for example. The only music in the film were all classical pieces played on piano. So in Artlist, I can just go into here, into genre, classical, instrument, piano, and then we have a ton of options. And here's for Elise, which I used in the video. Of course, for some of the more popular movies, you can just type in the movie, such as Barbie. Ooh, that one sounds really similar. But let's find even more like it with the similar song feature. This helped me quickly build the Barbie soundtrack for my video and gave me a ton of options to pull from to begin editing. And if you use the link below to sign up, you can get 2 months free with an annual subscription. I'll also make sure to include the specific songs I'm using in the description below in case you're curious. More than just music though, Artlist can help me find sound effects, which is important because this next one, I'll need the sound of walking in heels. I mean, we had to do this one. It's iconic, but more importantly, it won't involve as much set construction as many of the other shots from Barbie. But we do still need to build a set.
Okay, I talked to my prop/set person, and this is what we came up with. We're confined to a pretty small garage, so this is going to be tricky. We think we can make this section 4 feet back and this section 8 feet back, with it being 8 feet long in total. If we rotate it diagonally, it should fit. I really hope it fits. We'll make the floor out of particle board to save money, but we'll need to make it look like pink marble. I initially thought contact paper would be the best for this, but everything I've found so far with a marbly design has been more white than pink. So instead, I think we're going to try painting on some texture and adding a glossy finish on top for that shine. Next are the walls, and that should be pretty cheap and simple. We can just get drywall and prop it up. Then paint it with the same colors, meaning we won't have to buy more paint. And since the shot is low to the ground, we probably won't even need much drywall or to paint it very high, hopefully making this all easier than the floor. Now for the shower area and this shower half wall thing. We're gonna skip it. It's only in the shot briefly and we have our hands full. Like, to give you some context, we're starting construction just 2 days before the shoot, so we need to save time where we can. This vanity though, we can do that. We really just need 2 pink drawers. I'm thinking we may be able to find something on Facebook Marketplace and then just paint it pink. And if you didn't see any B-roll of us doing that, that means we just made it out of cardboard. Now these mountains. I'm not really sure. We don't have the time to paint them, so I initially thought using a TV screen, but if it's not big enough, then we're stuck. So I'm thinking we do a blue screen, which makes me very nervous because despite having been a filmmaker for 8 years, I still really haven't done any blue or green screen stuff. From all that I know, I just need to make sure to light it evenly. Finally, the heels. We're just gonna find something similar on Amazon and buy it. I think this may be the most expensive shot we're recreating. I really hope it turns out. Come with me to see the Barbie set. Let me give you the tour. This propped up piece of drywall, cardboard drawers, cardboard wall thing, large hole. This little warped up edge here because that's just how it dried. That's gonna cause some problems for us, actually. These 2 walls right here, washing machine. Then you might notice this really big gap here. We're actually supposed to put a blue screen here, but the blue screen didn't arrive when it said it would. We're not sure if we're gonna get it in time. Although it may look like a half-baked mess, on camera, it looks pretty great.
I just want to say that Anna, my set builder for this, did an excellent job. Thank you so much. Now that was the tricky part, so the rest should be fairly simple. Let's break it down into steps. I see 2 light sources, a strong backlight coming from back here, then a large soft light coming from here. With lighting, the set looks even better. The most important thing here to match the original is lens choice. I believe they're using a longer lens, and here's why. Longer lenses compress the image, making the background look closer and more out of focus. To illustrate this, let's start with a wider lens, the DZO 25mm. Obviously, this doesn't look like the shot in Barbie. Our background appears too far back, not to mention we can see past the set. We'll try something a little longer, the DZO 40mm. An improvement, but still not quite. So now, let's use the DZO 75mm. This looks much more compressed, and much more like Barbie. The camera moves with the actress as she walks. But since we're using the BMCC 6K, I have an idea that's easier. Let's shoot wide, in 6K, crop in and do the movement in post. Seems like a good idea, but it won't work, due to something called parallax. Notice how in the original we can see this section of the wall at this point, but later in the shot we can't. Compare that to ours, and we can't at any point, because we're not changing perspective. That's parallax. So our camera actually has to move, and to do it smoothly, we'll need a slider. I'll need a little practice. We still have a gaping hole in our set and no blue screen for it. So we had to go to the store and buy some blue fabric. I was not feeling very confident about this, but it'll have to work. Of course, our actress can't just slip right out of the heels and stand on her tiptoes. From an interview with Margot Robbie, we know
we had little sticky bits on the floor, double-sided tape for the shoes so they wouldn't come off, so I could get my feet out of them, and I was holding onto like a bar.
So we added some clear double-sided tape, then gave our actress some people to support her. It was rough at first, but we slowly got the hang of it, and finally got the take. Now we need our mountains, which I generated in Photoshop. Keyed the blue screen, tracked the camera so the mountains move with the shot, then moved the mountains properly for parallax, added a lens blur, and finally, we have this. That took so much longer than I expected, and this video is already massive, so I'm gonna have to break this into two parts. If you wanna see that, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. And while you're at it, why not go check out the other things I've recreated? All right, on to part 2.